The transport pod rattled as it pierced the atmosphere of Vareth 9, red desert stretching endlessly below. Marcus Chin gripped the safety harness, watching warning lights flash across the cracked dashboard. 3 days ago, he'd been flagged for emergency aid deployment. Now he was alone, dropping toward coordinates that showed nothing but wasteland. The pod slammed into sand. Marcus stumbled out, medical kit clutched against his chest, and froze. A girl lay 20 meters away, small and still against rust-colored dunes. Not human. Her skin shimmered pale violet in the dying light, and crystalline formations jutted from her shoulders like broken wings. Blood, dark blue, almost black, pooled beneath her. Marcus ran. She couldn't have been more than 6 in human years. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, each one weaker than the last. The crystalline growths looked like they were pulling back into her body, leaving raw wounds that wept luminescent fluid. "Hey," Marcus said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. Golden, with vertical pupils that struggled to focus. Her lips moved but no sound came. Marcus scanned her with his medical reader. The device shrieked warnings he couldn't interpret: alien physiology, unknown compounds, critical system failure. He switched it off and relied on what he could see. Dehydration. Shock. Whatever those crystalline structures were, their collapse was killing her. His water ration was 3 days' worth. He had protein bars designed for human metabolism. Everything in his training screamed that giving her human supplies could poison her faster than her injuries would. The girl's hand moved, fingers trembling toward her mouth. Marcus made his decision in half a heartbeat. He lifted her head, supporting her against his knee, and pressed the water bottle to her lips. She drank in desperate gulps, blue blood mixing with clean water that spilled down her chin. He tore open a protein bar and broke it into small pieces, feeding them to her slowly. "Easy," he murmured. "Small bites." She ate like she was starving, which she probably was. Color began returning to her face, less gray, more of that violet shimmer. The crystalline formation stopped receding. 20 minutes passed. Then an hour. Marcus used his jacket to shield her from the cold wind that rose with the sunset. He cleaned her wounds as best he could, wrapped them in sterile gauze that wouldn't stick to her alien biology. She fell asleep in his arms, breathing steady now. Marcus looked up at the sky, at the 3 moons rising in formation, and wondered what he'd just done. He felt them before he heard them. The sand began to vibrate. Then came the sound, a deep thrumming that resonated in his bones. Lights appeared on the horizon, swift and bright, moving in perfect formation. Ships. Dozens of them. They descended in a ring around Marcus and the sleeping girl, engines kicking up walls of sand. Each vessel was sleek, organic-looking, covered in the same crystalline patterns that grew from the girl's skin. They landed simultaneously, with military precision that spoke of centuries of discipline. Ramps descended. Figures emerged. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with the same violet-tinted skin as the girl but fully matured. The crystals on their bodies glowed with inner light, forming intricate patterns across their shoulders and arms. They wore armor that seemed to grow from their bodies rather than rest upon them. Weapons trained on Marcus immediately. Energy weapons that hummed with barely contained power. But nobody fired. The figures formed a perimeter, absolutely still, absolutely silent. Watching. Marcus stayed on his knees, the girl still cradled against his chest. He'd left his sidearm in the pod, not that it would matter against this many combatants. His heart hammered, but he kept his breathing steady, his movements calm. One figure moved forward. Female, Marcus thought, though he couldn't be certain. She was older than the others, with crystals that covered more of her body in complex geometric patterns. She stopped 3 meters away, her golden eyes fixed on the girl. Then, on the empty protein bar wrapper, the water bottle, the jacket wrapped around small shoulders. "You gave her your supplies," the woman said in perfect English, though her voice carried harmonics that human vocal cords couldn't produce. Marcus nodded slowly. "She was dying. Human food. Human water. Toxic to our biology." "I know. I did it anyway." The woman's expression didn't change. "Why?" "Because she was a child," Marcus said simply. "And she was dying." Silence stretched between them. The other soldiers remained frozen, weapons still trained but fingers off triggers, waiting for a command that didn't come. The woman moved closer, slow and deliberate. She knelt and placed one hand on the girl's forehead. The crystals on her palm began to glow, pulsing in rhythm with similar crystals embedded in the child's skin. "She lives," the woman said quietly. "She should not. Your supplies should have poisoned her within minutes. But she lives. I cleaned her wounds," Marcus offered. "Kept her warm. Gave her water slowly so she wouldn't. You cared for her." The woman's eyes met his, and Marcus saw something shift in their golden depths. "You cared for the daughter of our queen." The words hung in the air like a detonation. Marcus swallowed. "I didn't know. It would not have mattered if you did. She was cast out, exiled for the crime of weakness. We left her here to join the eternal sand, as tradition demands. And you—" The woman paused, her voice carrying weight that went beyond language. "You defied tradition. You gave hope where we had delivered judgment." The girl stirred. Her eyes opened, golden and clear, and she smiled up at Marcus before her gaze found the woman. "General," the girl whispered. "Princess," the woman replied. Then the general stood, turned to face the circle of soldiers, and spoke a single word in her own language. Every weapon lowered simultaneously. "You have changed the world tonight, human," she said. "And you do not yet understand how." Marcus looked down at the girl, the princess, and felt the weight of consequence settle on his shoulders like a physical thing. Behind him, more ships were appearing on the horizon. Larger ones. And the thrumming in the sand had become a tremor that wouldn't stop. The largest ship descended on pillars of white light that turned sand to glass. It dwarfed the military vessels surrounding it, a kilometer of crystalline architecture that caught the moonlight and threw it back in rainbow fractures. The ramp that extended was wide enough to drive a tank through. The soldiers around Marcus dropped to one knee in perfect unison. Even the general lowered her head. Marcus stayed where he was, still holding the princess, because he didn't know the protocol and wasn't about to drop a child to perform a gesture he didn't understand. The figure that descended the ramp made the other soldiers look small. She stood 8 feet tall, and her crystalline formations weren't just patterns. They were architecture, complex structures that grew from her skin like living art. They glowed with soft light that pulsed in time with her heartbeat. Her face was beautiful and terrible, sharp angles that suggested both elegance and lethality. She wore no armor because her body was armor, crystals forming protective layers across vital areas. This was power made manifest, authority that needed no announcement. The Queen of Vareth walked toward Marcus with footsteps that made no sound. She stopped 5 meters away. Her eyes, darker gold than her daughter's, ancient and weighing, fixed on the small form in Marcus's arms. "You hold my daughter," she said. Her voice was quieter than the general's had been, but it carried across the entire landing zone with crystal clarity. "Yes," Marcus said. He didn't add "Your Majesty" or bow because he was still holding a child, and that took priority over politics. "You fed her. Gave her water. Human sustenance that should have killed her within minutes. I cleaned her wounds too. Used my jacket to keep her warm. I have thermal blankets in my pod if she needs. She was exiled. The queen's voice didn't rise, but the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Cast out for failing her trials. For showing weakness that would shame our bloodline. The law is absolute. The weak join the sand. Marcus met her eyes. She is 6 years old. Age is not a factor in strength. She's a child. She was judged and found wanting. Then your judgment was wrong. Every soldier in the circle tensed. The general's hand moved toward her weapon. But Marcus kept his voice level, kept his body language calm and protective around the small form in his arms. She wasn't weak, Marcus continued. She was injured, dehydrated, and abandoned. That's not the same as being unworthy. That's just being in need of help. And I was raised to believe that when someone needs help, especially a child, you give it. No conditions. No judgment. Just help. The queen stared at him. Seconds passed like hours. You defied our law, she said. I wasn't aware of your law. I'm aware of mine. And what law governs you, human? The one that says a dying child deserves to live. The princess stirred in Marcus's arms. She looked up at her mother with those wide golden eyes and spoke in their own language, a series of tones and harmonics that Marcus's ear couldn't fully process. The queen's expression shifted, just fractionally, but Marcus saw it. She moved closer. The general tensed but didn't interfere. The queen knelt, bringing herself to eye level with Marcus, and gently touched her daughter's face. The crystals on her palm glowed, connecting with matching formations on the child's skin. She says you sang to her, the queen said quietly, while she slept. A human song about stars. Marcus blinked. He'd been humming without thinking, an old lullaby his grandmother had taught him. He hadn't realized the girl was listening. Old habits, he said. Kids sleep better with music. She says you cried. Marcus hadn't thought the princess noticed that either. Yeah, I did. Why? Because I thought she might die. And that scared me. The queen studied him with an intensity that felt like being dissected. You do not know her. She is not your species. She was exiled under laws older than your civilization. Yet you cried for her. She's a kid. That's all the reason I need. Another pause. Longer this time. My daughter, the queen said slowly, was born during a civil war. The traditionalists declared that any heir who showed mercy would be unfit to rule. They demanded trials, tests of strength, of cruelty, of the willingness to sacrifice the weak. She was 5 years old. And when she refused to execute a prisoner who begged for mercy, they declared her contaminated with weakness. They demanded her exile or my abdication. Marcus felt his chest tighten. You chose the throne. I chose the survival of my people. The traditionalists controlled half our military. Open war would have killed billions. So I agreed to their terms. 1 year of exile. If she survived, she could return. If she died, the queen's voice finally showed emotion, a hairline crack in absolute control. Then the desert would have claimed her, and I would have reigned over a people I no longer wish to lead. That's monstrous. That is tradition. That is survival. That is rule. The queen's eyes hardened again. And you have broken it. Good. The single word hung in the air like a thrown knife. The general stepped forward. Your Majesty, the human speaks out of turn. No. The queen raised one hand, and the general fell silent. He speaks truth. Uncomfortable truth, but truth nonetheless. She stood, rising to her full height, and addressed the circle of soldiers. This human found my daughter dying. He knew nothing of our laws, nothing of our politics, nothing of the price his actions might carry. He saw only a child in need. And he acted. The Queen's voice grew stronger, carrying across the landing zone. He gave her his food, his water, his warmth. Resources he needs for his own survival, given to a stranger who might poison herself on his kindness. He did this not for reward, not for recognition, not even with certainty it would work. He did it because it was right. She turned back to Marcus. Our traditions say the weak join the sand. But you have shown me that protecting the vulnerable is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. You have reminded me of what I have forgotten in my years of rule, that mercy and power are not enemies. They are partners. The Queen knelt again, but this time her posture was different. This time, it was deliberate. By the old laws, you saved the life of an exile. By doing so, you assumed responsibility for her survival. You became her guardian, her protector. The Queen's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried to every soldier present. Her family. Marcus's eyes widened. Wait, I didn't. The law is absolute. The Queen continued. You saved her life. Therefore her life is bound to yours. And, as she is of royal blood, her binding creates obligation. You have claimed the princess. Therefore, she paused, and Marcus saw something that might have been humor flicker across her face. The princess claims you. I don't understand. You will. The Queen stood and extended her hand. Marcus Chin of Earth, you have done my daughter and my people a service beyond measure. You have given me back what I thought was lost. For this, I offer you a place in my household, a position of honor. And when my daughter comes of age, the Queen glanced at the girl, who was watching with wide eyes. If she chooses, the opportunity to continue the bond you have created. You mean? Marcus couldn't quite process the words. You're saying that one day she might choose you as her partner, her consort, her equal in rule. The Queen's expression was unreadable. The law of binding is rarely invoked. But when it is sacred. You saved her life. You cared for her when none of her own people would. That creates a debt that only time and her choice can resolve. Marcus looked down at the princess. She smiled at him, small and hopeful and alive. I don't want to rule anything, Marcus said quietly. I'm a field medic. I help people. That's all I know how to do. Then you will teach my daughter. The Queen replied. You will show her that helping people, even when tradition forbids it, even when the cost is high, even when the outcome is uncertain, is the greatest strength of all. And, perhaps, her voice softened, you will teach me the same lesson again. She extended her hand once more. Marcus looked at it, looked at the princess, looked at the circle of soldiers and the ships and the vast desert that had almost claimed a child's life. He shifted the princess in his arms and took the Queen's hand. Her grip was firm and warm, and the crystals on her palm glowed where they touched his skin. Welcome to the House of Eternal Crystal, the Queen said. Welcome to Vareth. And welcome. She glanced at her daughter with an expression that was almost a smile. To a family that will never abandon you as I abandoned her. The soldiers rose as one. The general stepped forward and placed her fist over her heart, a salute that the others echoed. And Marcus, still holding a small alien princess who'd nearly died in the sand, realized his life had just changed in ways he couldn't begin to calculate. The princess tugged on his shirt. When he looked down, she spoke in careful, halting English. Thank you, she whispered. For the water. For the song. For staying. Marcus felt his throat tighten. You're welcome, kid. She smiled and closed her eyes, finally safe. The Queen's ship interior was nothing like Marcus expected. He'd braced himself for cold crystal halls and alien architecture that defied human logic. Instead, he found spaces that flowed like water, walls that shifted to accommodate movement, and light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The princess, whose name he'd learned was Sayri, walked beside him now, her small hand in his. She'd recovered faster than seemed possible. Within hours of receiving proper medical care from the ship's healers, the wounds had closed and the crystals on her shoulders had regrown into delicate formations that caught light like prisms. She still stayed close to Marcus, though, as if afraid he might disappear. The general, Commander Veka, walked 3 steps behind them. Not threatening now, but vigilant, watching Marcus like he was a puzzle she hadn't solved yet.
"The Queen has prepared quarters for you in the royal wing,"
Veka said.
"You'll have full access to our educational systems, translation matrices, cultural databases. Learning our ways will take time." "How much time?"
Marcus asked.
"Years. Perhaps decades. I'm not sure I have decades to spare. Your species lives roughly 80 years in optimal conditions.
Princess Sayri will not reach maturity for another 15 years. You have time."
Marcus glanced down at Sayri. She squeezed his hand and looked up with those golden eyes that held far too much understanding for a child her age.
"What happens if I say no?"
Marcus asked quietly.
"If I want to go home?"
Veka's expression didn't change.
"You may leave whenever you wish. You are not a prisoner. But the binding law remains in effect whether you are here or on Earth. Princess Sayri's life is tied to yours. Should you die, the bond breaks. Should she die,"
Veka paused,
"you would feel it. The connection goes both ways. You're saying if something happens to her, I'll know?" "More than know. You'll feel her pain, her fear, her death. The bond is permanent. You created it the moment you chose her survival over tradition."
Marcus stopped walking.
"Nobody told me that. You didn't ask. You simply acted. That is why the bond took hold so strongly."
Veka moved to stand in front of him, her height forcing Marcus to look up.
"Most bonds form gradually, through years of shared experience. Yours formed in a single act of selfless care. It is the strongest kind. And the most dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "Because if you leave now, if you return to Earth and try to forget this happened, the bond will not forget you. Every time Princess Sayri is in danger, you will feel it. Every time she suffers, you will suffer. You can run to the other side of the galaxy, and it will not matter. You are connected now. The only question is whether you will honor that connection or flee from it."
Sayri's hand tightened around Marcus's fingers. When he looked down, he saw fear in her eyes. Fear that he would leave. Fear that she would be alone again. Marcus took a slow breath and met Veka's gaze.
"Then I guess I'm staying. At least until we figure out what this bond means, and how to help Sayri grow up without feeling like she's got a human anchor tied to her soul."
Something shifted in Veka's expression. Not quite approval, but close.
"The Queen will be pleased. The Queen scares me." "Good. She should. But understand this, she did not send her daughter into exile lightly. It nearly destroyed her. The fact that you returned what she had lost, that you proved the traditionalists wrong, that you showed mercy can coexist with strength."
Veka trailed off.
"You have given our Queen back her hope. Do not underestimate what that means."
They continued through the ship until they reached a set of doors that towered 3 times Marcus's height. The doors recognized Sayri and opened silently, revealing a chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The room was a garden. An actual garden growing inside a spaceship, with trees that reached toward a domed ceiling showing real stars beyond. Water ran through channels cut in crystalline stone. Flowers that glowed softly in the evening light swayed in a breeze that smelled of spice and growing things. This was my mother's sanctuary, Siri said quietly. Before the war. She hasn't entered it since I was exiled. But she opened it for you. Marcus felt the weight of that gesture. Why? Because you brought her daughter back. Because you showed her that the old ways can change. Because? Siri hesitated, then continued in a voice barely above a whisper. Because she wants to remember how to be the person who built gardens instead of the person who sends children into the desert. A door on the far side of the garden opened. The queen entered alone, without guards or ceremony. She removed most of her formal crystalline armor, leaving only the natural formations that grew from her skin. She looked smaller somehow. More tired. Marcus-chan, she said. I owe you an explanation. You owe me nothing, your majesty. I sent my daughter to die. You saved her. I owe you everything. The queen moved to one of the garden benches and sat with a heaviness that spoke of exhaustion beyond the physical. Sit. Please. Let me tell you what you have walked into. Marcus sat. Siri climbed onto the bench beside him, staying close. The queen looked at her daughter with an expression that mixed love and regret in equal measure. Our people have ruled Vareth for 10,000 years. We were not always warriors. Once, we were explorers, artists, philosophers. The crystals you see growing from our bodies are not natural. They are the result of bonding with the planet itself. We became extensions of Varetha's will. In return, Vareth gave us strength, longevity, and power beyond measure. What changed? Marcus asked. Resources, territory, fear. The queen's voice hardened. 500 years ago, we encountered another species. They wanted what we had. War lasted for decades. We won, but the cost was staggering. And, in the aftermath, the traditionalists rose to power. They argued that our weakness, our mercy, our willingness to negotiate rather than conquer had nearly destroyed us. They demanded we become harder, stronger, willing to sacrifice anything and anyone to ensure the survival of our people, including your daughter, including my daughter. The queen closed her eyes. The traditionalists created trials for all royal children, tests designed to prove they would be strong enough to lead in a hostile universe. Siri's trial was simple. Execute a prisoner who had stolen food during the famine. A traitor by our laws. The penalty was death. But she refused, Marcus said. She asked why the person stole food. When told it was to feed starving children in the outer settlements, Siri said that protecting children could not be a crime. She argued that a leader who kills those who protect the weak is not strong. They are simply cruel. The queen opened her eyes, and they were wet. She was 5 years old. And she was right. So they exiled her. They gave me a choice. Exile her, or face civil war. Half our military followed the traditionalists. The other half followed me. War would have killed billions. Exile would kill only one. The mathematics were simple. The morality was impossible. You chose billions over one. I chose my people over my child. And I have regretted it every moment since. The queen looked at Marcus. Then you came. A stranger who knew nothing of our politics, our history, our laws. You saw a dying child and you saved her. You proved that mercy and strength can coexist. You showed my people that the traditionalist way is not the only way. And you gave me back what I thought was lost forever. The queen stood and approached Marcus. She knelt, bringing herself to his eye level, and placed both hands on his shoulders. The crystals on her palms glowed warm. I am not asking you to rule. I am not asking you to become something you are not. But I am asking you to stay. To be part of Siri's life as she grows. To teach her that the kindness you showed is not weakness, but the highest form of courage. And the queen's voice dropped to something that sounded almost vulnerable. To teach me the same lesson again, because I have forgotten it in the years of war.
Marcus looked at Siri. The princess watched him with hope and fear and trust all mixed together in her golden eyes.
I'm not a diplomat,
Marcus said.
I'm not a politician. I'm not even a particularly good medic. I'm just someone who helps when people need help. That is exactly what we need,
the queen replied.
Someone who helps. Not because of law or tradition or political gain, but simply because it is right.
She stood and extended her hand once more. Not a formal gesture this time. Just an offer.
Stay,
the queen said.
Help my daughter grow into the leader she was meant to be. Help my people remember what we were before fear made us cruel. And help me,
her voice caught just slightly,
become the mother I should have been.
Marcus took her hand.
Okay,
he said.
I'll stay. But we're doing this my way. No trials, no tests, no proving strength through cruelty. If I'm teaching Siri, I'm teaching her that leadership means protecting people, not dominating them.
The queen smiled. It transformed her face, made her look younger and more human despite her alien features.
Agreed. And you have to let me call you by your name, not title. If we're going to do this family thing, I'm not standing on ceremony every time we talk.
The queen laughed, an actual laugh that sounded like crystal chimes.
My name is Caliph. Caliph.
Marcus tested the word.
Okay. I can work with that.
Siri launched herself at Marcus, wrapping small arms around his waist and burying her face in his shirt. He held her automatically, one hand on her head, feeling the delicate crystal formations under his palm.
Thank you,
Siri whispered.
For staying. For not leaving me alone again. I'm not going anywhere, kid,
Marcus said. And meant it. 6 months passed like water through fingers. Marcus learned the language first, complex harmonics that his human vocal cords struggled to produce until the healers gave him a translator implant. Then came the history, dense and violent and full of glory that tasted like ash. The culture, with its layers of protocol and unspoken rules that would take years to fully understand. The politics, which were Byzantine enough to make Earth's worst bureaucracies look simple. Through it all, Siri stayed at his side. She showed him the proper way to greet the crystal gardens that grew throughout the palace, hand flat against the largest formation, mind open to the song the crystals sang. She taught him to eat their food, which tasted like light and spice and growing things all mixed together. She introduced him to the palace staff, the guards, the advisors, the ambassadors from a dozen different species that Marcus hadn't known existed. And slowly, gradually Marcus became part of the household. He set up a medical clinic in one of the palace's lower levels. Word spread that the human who'd saved the princess would treat anyone regardless of rank or station. Within weeks, he was seeing hundreds of patients, soldiers with old wounds, workers with chronic pain, children with illnesses that traditional healers couldn't cure. His human medical knowledge combined with alien physiology created solutions that neither species had considered before. The traditionalists watched him with suspicion, but they couldn't argue with results. Commander Vega became something like a friend. She taught Marcus combat, not because he needed to fight, but because understanding how soldiers thought would help him navigate palace politics. She was patient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless when she needed to be.
You're getting better,
Vega said one afternoon, after Marcus had managed to last 30 seconds in a sparring match instead of his usual 10.
In another 5 years, you might actually be competent. High praise from someone who could kill me with her pinky finger. Accuracy, not praise.
Vega lowered her practice blade.
But you're learning. More importantly, The soldiers are watching you learn. They see you struggle. They see you fail. They see you get up and try again. It matters. Why? Because it shows you're not trying to pretend you're one of us. You're acknowledging your limitations and working within them. That's honest.
Our people respect honesty more than false strength.
Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead.
How's the political situation? I heard there was another council meeting. The traditionalists are weakening. Not quickly, but steadily. Every time you treat one of their supporters, every time you show that mercy can produce practical results, they lose ground. And
Becca hesitated, which was unusual for her.
The Queen is changing, becoming more like she was before the war. It's subtle, but those of us who remember can see it. Good? Very good. The Queen we needed during the war was hard and uncompromising. But that's not the Queen we need in peace. You're helping her remember the difference.
Sci-Fi appeared at the entrance to the training hall, her tutor trailing behind her looking harassed.
Marcus, you promised to help me with human literature today. Did I? You did. Last week. You said we'd read something with dragons. The Hobbit? Yes. That one.
Sci-Fi bounced on her toes, crystals chiming softly with the movement.
Please? I finished all my political studies. I memorized the treaty clauses. I even sat through Ambassador Thon's lecture on resource management without falling asleep.
Marcus laughed.
Okay. Let me clean up, and we'll read for an hour before dinner.
Sci-Fi beamed and ran off to prepare. Her tutor gave Marcus a grateful look before following.
She adores you,
Becca observed.
She's a good kid. She's the future queen. And you're teaching her that strength can wear a gentle face. Do you understand how revolutionary that is?
Marcus shrugged.
I'm just teaching her to read. You're teaching her to be human. Or at least to understand humanity. That might be the most important education she receives.
That evening, Marcus sat in the garden with Sci-Fi curled against his side, reading about hobbits and dragons and adventures in lands that never existed. Sci-Fi listened with rapt attention, asking questions about why Bilbo was afraid and why Gandalf helped him and why the dwarves sang sad songs. Queen Calith appeared halfway through the second chapter. She stood at the garden's edge, just listening.
Marcus paused. Would you like to join us, Your Majesty?
Calith, she corrected gently.
And yes. If there's room.
Sci-Fi immediately made space on the bench. Calith sat, and, for a moment, they were just a family reading together in the evening light. Marcus continued the story. He changed his voice for different characters, made Sci-Fi laugh at Bilbo's complaints, and let the words paint pictures of mountains and moons. When he finished the chapter, Sci-Fi was yawning. Calith lifted her daughter easily and held her close.
Thank you,
Calith said to Marcus.
For this. For all of it. It's just a story. It's time together. It's peace. It's the childhood she should have had from the beginning.
Calith's eyes met his.
I am grateful every day that you found her. That you chose to help. That you stayed. I'm glad I did,
Marcus said, and realized he meant it completely. That night, alone in his quarters, Marcus thought about the trajectory of his life. 6 months ago, he'd been a field medic taking assignments wherever the aid organization sent him. Now, he was part of an alien royal family, teaching a princess to read English, and somehow helping reshape the politics of an entire civilization. It was insane. It was also exactly where he needed to be.
His communicator chimed. A message from Earth, his supervisor, checking in. Marcus read it and crafted a careful response. He was on extended assignment, learning new medical techniques. Everything was fine. He returned when the work was done.
All true. None of it capturing the full truth. Marcus looked out the window at Veritha's 3 moons and wondered what would come next. Whatever it was, he'd face it the same way he'd faced everything else, one choice at a time, trying to do what was right, hoping it was enough. The years folded into each other like origami. Marcus watched Cyree grow from a small girl into a young woman who carried herself with increasing confidence. Her crystals developed into complex formations that marked her as royal blood, glowing softly whenever she used the mental disciplines her mother taught her. She mastered languages, diplomacy, military strategy, and the 1,000 small skills required of someone who would one day rule. But she also learned to laugh, to question, to see the person behind the title. Marcus's medical practice expanded into a full hospital. He trained Verity healers in human medical techniques and learned their crystal-based healing in return. The synthesis produced breakthrough treatments that helped both species. The traditionalists couldn't argue with hospital wings full of recovering patients. Queen Caliph changed too. Slowly at first, then, with increasing momentum, she began reversing harsh edicts left over from the war. She reached out to neighboring species with offers of cooperation instead of demands for submission. She established councils where common citizens could petition for changes in law. The traditionalists fought her at every step, but they were losing ground. "You've turned my household into a revolution," Kayla said one evening. She and Marcus stood on one of the palace's observation decks, watching Veritha's capital city spread beneath them in a carpet of light. "Half the High Council wants you removed. The other half wants to make you a permanent advisor. Which half do you listen to?" "Neither. I make my own decisions." Caliph smiled. "But I value your presence. You remind me that power is a tool, not an identity. That a queen can also be a mother. That strength and kindness are not opposites. You're giving me too much credit. I'm giving you exactly the credit you deserve." Caliph turned to face him. "Cyree will be of age soon. Another year, perhaps 2. The bonding law will activate fully then. She will have to choose whether to formalize the bond you created or release it." Marcus's stomach tightened. "And if she releases it? Then you are free to return to Earth with honor and gratitude. The bond will fade over time, and you can resume your life as it was. And if she doesn't?" Caliph's expression became unreadable. "Then you become her consort, her equal in rule, her partner in all things. You would be bound to her and to Verith until death. Your human lifespan would be extended by our medical technology. Your children, should you choose to have them, would carry both human and Verity traits. You would help shape the future of 2 species. That's a lot of pressure to put on a kid's decision. Cyree is no longer a child. She understands what the choice means. And," Caliph paused, choosing words carefully, "she has made her preference clear in every way except formal declaration. She trusts you, admires you, loves you as family and, I suspect, is beginning to love you as something more. She's still young. By your standards, yes. By ours, she is entering adulthood. The bond will complete when she reaches maturity, whether you acknowledge it or not. The question is whether you will accept it or run from it." Marcus looked out at the city. Millions of lives, all interconnected in ways he barely understood. "I never wanted to rule anything. Neither did I. But here we are." Caliph placed a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to decide tonight. But think about it. Consider what kind of future you want. And know that whatever you choose, you have my gratitude and respect." She left him alone with his thoughts. 2 months later, the traditionalists made their move. The attack came during a public ceremony. Cyree was accepting an award for her diplomatic work with neighboring systems when the bomb detonated. Marcus was 50 meters away and felt it through the bond before his ears registered the explosion, a spike of fear and pain that drove him to his knees. He ran. The crowd was chaos, people screaming and fleeing while guards rushed toward the blast site.
Marcus shoved through them all, using combat training Veka had drilled into him, and reached Siri within seconds. She was alive but badly hurt. Shrapnel had torn through her side and her left arm hung at a wrong angle. Blood, that dark blue-black that Marcus had first seen in the desert, spread across the platform.
"I've got you,"
Marcus said, hands already assessing damage.
"You're going to be fine." "They tried to kill me,"
Siri gasped.
"They actually don't talk. Save your strength."
Marcus pulled emergency medical supplies from the kit he always carried. His hands worked automatically, stopped the bleeding, stabilized the fracture, checked for internal damage. The bond pulsed between them, letting him feel her pain, her fear, but also her determination not to show weakness. The guards formed a protective circle. Veka appeared at Marcus's side, weapon drawn.
"How bad?"
she demanded.
"Bad but survivable. I need to get her to the hospital now. Transport is incoming. The Queen is."
An explosion rocked the palace's eastern wing. Then, another in the west. Coordinated attacks meant to cause maximum chaos.
"This is a coup attempt,"
Veka said flatly.
"The traditionalists are making their final move. We need to get the princess to safety. The hospital will be a target. They'll expect us to go there."
Veka made a decision.
"My ship. It's fortified and has medical facilities. We go now."
They moved as a unit, Marcus carrying Siri, Veka, and a squad of guards forming a protective box around them. Explosions continued throughout the palace. Small arms fire echoed from somewhere above. The coup was well planned and well executed. They reached Veka's ship and sealed the doors. Marcus immediately took Siri to the medical bay and began working. The equipment was familiar now. He'd spent years learning to use it. Crystal-based scanners showed internal bleeding that would need immediate surgery.
"Stay with me, kid,"
Marcus murmured as he prepped for the procedure.
"You survived worse. Remember the desert? This is nothing. That feels like another life,"
Siri whispered.
"You gave me water, sang to me, made me feel safe when I thought I was dying. You're not dying today either. I won't allow it."
Siri's hand found his.
"I choose you, Marcus. When this is over, I choose you. I just wanted you to know in case, no."
"Don't do that. Don't talk like you're dying because you're not."
Marcus squeezed her hand.
"You're going to live. You're going to become queen. And then we'll figure out what this bond means together. But you have to stay with me. I will. I promise."
The surgery took 3 hours. Veka maintained defensive position around the ship while monitoring palace communications. The coup was collapsing. Caliph had been ready for betrayal and her loyalist forces were winning. But the cost was high. Dozens dead. Parts of the palace destroyed. The traditionalist leadership in custody or dead themselves. When Marcus finally emerged from the medical bay, exhausted and covered in blue blood, Veka handed him a communicator.
"The queen wants to speak with you."
Caliph's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but triumphant.
"How is my daughter?" "Stable. She'll need weeks of recovery, but she'll live."
Caliph closed her eyes.
"Thank you. Again. Always, it seems I am thanking you. Is it over? The coup?" "Yes." The traditionalists overplayed their hand. Their attack on Siri turned their own supporters against them. Sometimes a single act of cruelty reveals everything that's wrong with an ideology.
Caliph smiled grimly.
"They thought killing my daughter would prove strength.
Instead, they proved they were nothing but cowards willing to murder a young woman for political gain. Our people saw through them. What happens now? Now we rebuild. Again. And we do it without the traditionalists in power. This is your victory as much as mine, Marcus. You showed us there was another way. You proved that mercy could coexist with strength. You gave my daughter the courage to choose kindness over cruelty. And that choice, Calitha's voice caught. That choice saved us all. She said something before the surgery, Marcus said quietly. She said she chooses me. That when this is over, she chooses me. Calitha's expression softened. And do you choose her? Marcus thought about the girl dying in the desert, the princess reading about hobbits, the young woman who'd grown into someone wise and kind and strong. The bond between them that had started with a simple act of compassion and had grown into something profound. Yeah, Marcus said. I do. Then, when she recovers, we will make it official. And you will become Prince Consort of Vareth, partner to the future queen, and bridge between two species. Calith paused. It will not be easy. There will be challenges, political opposition, cultural misunderstandings. But if you face it together, you will succeed. Of that I am certain. The communicator cut off. Marcus returned to the medical bay and sat beside Ciri's bed. She was sleeping now, breathing steady and strong. He took her hand and felt the bond pulse between them, connection forged in crisis, strengthened through years of shared experience, and, finally, acknowledged for what it had always been. Family. Partnership. Love. I'm here, Marcus whispered. And I'm not going anywhere. Ciri's fingers tightened around his, even in sleep. Outside the ship, Varetha's sun was rising. The city below was damaged but not broken. The palace showed scars but stood firm. And somewhere in that landscape, a new future was taking shape, one built not on tradition or fear, but on the simple truth that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show kindness to someone who needs it. Marcus had come to this world expecting nothing but a routine aid mission. Instead, he'd found a purpose he never knew he was looking for. And in saving one dying child in the desert, he'd helped save an entire civilization from itself. The sun climbed higher, painting the world in shades of gold and promise. Marcus held Ciri's hand and watched the light spread across the city. Whatever came next, they would face it together. A human medic and an alien queen in waiting, bound by choice and circumstance and a love that had grown from the simplest of actions. The future was uncertain. But, for the first time in years, Marcus felt certain of his place in it. Here. Now. With the woman who'd started as a dying child in the sand and become the center of his world. It was enough. More than enough. It was everything.